Hi, welcome. Let's talk about doing live video conferencing with students. Today we're going to do this using the tool called Blackboard Collaborate. It's something free to UCA faculty and staff, unlimited and available anytime in web browser from your Blackboard course directly, and it integrates directly with Blackboard. It is worth mentioning that Google Meet, used to be called Google Hangouts, also has a web conferencing tool that you can use. You're absolutely welcome to use it. Google has opened it up now through July to be premium, which means it's pretty well unlimited. It's up to like several hundreds of thousands of users at a time at any given time or across campus. So you can use that as well if you are using Google Classroom or you're already using Google Hangouts for your virtual office hours or something along those lines. But today's session is going to focus primarily on Blackboard Collaborate, since that is the main tool that integrates with Blackboard directly. First of all, let's step back and think before we dive into the course that you see here. Let's step back and think, what is the best use of mine and students' time related to live web conferencing? Is it lecturing? Is it doing question and answer sessions? Is it doing virtual office hours? What are your goals? What do you think this tool will help you do easiest and quickest and most efficiently and effectively for you and students in this time period? Is it really important that students check in live at a particular time for a particular lecture? Or could that lecture be recorded for those who are there and students can watch it at a later date? These are just some questions to think about at this time. Chances are students' lives and schedules are a little hectic right now as well. So things may be unpredictable for them as well as they are for you. So think about some of these things as we're thinking about using this tool, and prioritize your use of live sessions to be the most beneficial for students, which ultimately will be the most beneficial for you as well. Okay? If you want to do recorded videos, there will be some resources on the instructional continuity page on recording videos as well. Note this is on live web conferencing videos that can also be recorded, so you can do it that way, but you can also find out more about other tools that can be used to record videos on the instructional continuity page. All right, so let's dive in. You see here I am in a Blackboard course right now, in a blank course, nothing's in it yet, and we're going to add Collaborate to this course so students can access it. So to do that, there's actually two places where you can add Blackboard, and I strongly recommend you do at least one, if not both of these, if you're going to use this tool. So if you add it to your course menu, if you want to add it to your course menu, if it's something you're going to be using often or referring students to regularly, this is probably a good idea. So to add it to your course menu, you're going to click the little plus sign up here, click or hover over it, and you'll have a list of options show up. You want to pick Tool Link from here, and I'm going to name it Collaborate for my purposes today. You could name it Virtual Office, or you could name it whatever makes sense, however you're going to refer to it to your students. Live meetings, whatever makes sense to you. Okay, and then from the top, I'm going to pull down and choose the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra tool from this list. Not the scheduling manager, but the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra tool. Okay, and then of course make it available to users and submit. And then I'm going to leave it down here at the bottom, but know that you can move it up, right under my grades or wherever makes sense for you and students to access it quickly. Okay. The second place where you can add a Collaborate link is within the online classroom. This is the area where you will probably be putting most of your content anyhow, and so students will be in this area a lot. So to add that item here, you'll go to Tools, and there's a list of all kinds of different tools that are available, of course, and we're wanting to add a Blackboard Collaborate tool here. You're doing a link to the tool just like we did on the course menu. Then you'll see the course room in this list, and you'll click Add Link to Course. If you had scheduled sessions you did or recordings, you could also add links to them in particular weeks or modules if you choose to do it that way. But if you just use the main course room, which we'll talk about later, you can say add link to course. It's going to come up to the place where you can rename the link and choose where you want it to be. I'm going to select online classroom. If you have subfolders in here for the weeks of material that will be in the course or whatever, if you have any folders in there, there will be a drop down here where you can see those subfolders, and you can put things anywhere in the online classroom that you prefer. So if you want inside of a folder or just an online classroom directly, either way you can put that there. I recommend, if you're using the same room over and over, to just put a link to that room at the top of the online classroom so that they see it every time they log in. And then you can give more information to them in the details in the description here about virtual meeting times or whenever, right? You can put date restrictions. I probably wouldn't on this one though. Okay, and I'm going to click save. And now if we go to the online classroom, you will see there's the link to the course room. When you and students click on this, you'll have a very similar view. Your view, just like most of Blackboard, your view and Collaborate is very, very similar to students. You just have more options when you click on menus and stuff than students have. In here, you'll notice you automatically have a course room. Every course has a Collaborate course room available. You could create individual sessions, such as office hours that was created recently. You could create a session for, certain times you're going to meet during the week with students live. Or you could just say, students, we're going to be in the course room. Go into the, whatever the name of your course is, course room. In this case, Blackboard Testing Blank Course is the name of my course, right? So this course room will always be at the top, easily accessible, okay? When you click on the course room, you get all of these settings and stuff. Most of your session settings, the default is probably going to be fine. Notice that you can bring guests in if you choose to. You can also use anonymous dial-in. Students can use their phone, or you can use your phone to do the audio part of this if that is easier for your current situation, depending on your bandwidth needs and such. So I'm going to click Join Course Room, and that will open up Collaborate. Notice it opens it in a new tab up here. Okay, so we've got the course over here, we've got Collaborate over here. It's always going to ask you to allow to use your microphone at this point. Depending on which browser you're in, it may look a little different on where this pop-up shows up for you. In Safari, it pops up right here. So I'm going to say allow. You'll need to do that in order to use the microphone for the Collaborate session. All right, we're in here. Now it kind of looks blank at first, right? Because nobody else is in here. No one else is doing anything. You've not started anything, but that's okay. You always want to be the first to arrive to your classroom, right? So let's start on the left-hand menu here, because there's something I want to recommend that you always start with, and that is to turn your recording feature on. As soon as you come in, go ahead and click Start Recording. That way you don't forget it once you get into working with students and collaborating with them in whatever way. So go ahead and click Start Recording. I'm going to do that as well so I don't forget. It says session is being recorded. Every time someone comes into the session, every student that adds, they'll get a notification similar to that says session is being recorded, so that they know whatever they say, whatever they type in the chat, whatever they do will also be recorded. This is also where you can use your phone for audio if you need to once you're in the session. If you want to look at some tutorials, I think a little tutorial comes up the first time you use Collaborate. If you say, I don't want to do this right now, you can always get back to those right here, and there's also help, okay? Later when it's time, when we're done with Collaborate, you'll leave the session here as well. Okay, so this is kind of like the overarching Collaborate stuff. Now, we're going to skip over to the other side and look at the panels over here. Before I do that though, I do want to mention this view here is where you're going to see your students connecting with you. So let me go ahead and start getting connected on another device here. Alright, so I'm going in on my mobile app on my phone, and I'm going to join in basically as another user. as another student, just similar to how students would connect. That way there's two people in here and you can kind of see what it looks like with other people in here. Allow the microphone. Okay, now there's another user in here. Just for grins, I'm going to turn on my webcam for just a moment on the phone so you can see what that will look like. Okay, hi, you see me on the screen? That's how it will be for students. Whoever has their webcam on or is talking will be the person that will come up on the big screen you'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my video back off and my audio off. When you're talking, you'll be the big person on the screen for students. That will automatically fluctuate the view based on who's talking or who's engaging at the time. I think the default is the moderator or the instructor, but then this view will change based on who's communicating at the time. So if you open up the floor for student questions, they can raise their hands if you want them to, or they can just pop in. You have to set those parameters for what you want them to do though, but they can raise their hand, they can turn their audio on, turn their video on. Notice when you're ready to talk to students, you'll want to turn your audio on and share your audio. I recommend sharing your video most of the time if possible. As well, when you do turn the video part on, it will again ask you, do you want to allow Collaborate to use the camera, and you'll have to say yes, allow, and you'll get a preview. Then you can share your video, and it's going to do very similar to what you saw before. Okay, I'm going to put my hand down. Now let's go over here to the little purple button on the right hand side. This is where the magic happens in Collaborate. So you can sit here and just conference back and forth and Collaborate just fine. It's not a problem. But let's say you want to connect in a different way with your students or see what else is going on. This is where you and students will find the chat panel. So you can, type something here and students will find this quickly, honestly, once they're in there, and they will be communicating in here most likely. It's a good way for you to kind of get a check on how they're doing. When you first come in and you're ready to get started, you might want to ensure everybody can hear you, see whatever you want them to see on the screen, things like that. You can check for things like that. You can check for understanding, and have them type in the chat their responses to you. Have them type in the chat any questions that they have. When they do this, you'll find students will actually start answering each other, and you can have this up simultaneously while you're talking about whatever you're talking about, and you may notice a question come through you want to address, and you can address that live just like you would in class. There are 4 different panels down here, so let's go through those real quick. One is the attendees panel. You'll see there's 2 Vickies in here, right? I'm currently in as the support moderator. This is my phone view, the Vicki Parrish, and that's a participant, right? So as everyone joins, as all of your students join, they will be participants and you will be the moderator. You can move people between those 2 roles if you choose to. I'm going to skip share content and we'll come back to it next because it's pretty involved. I'm not going to get into the settings, but I am going to note that this is where your settings are. Again, it has use phone for audio. You can get to that from both areas. If you need to set up your camera, microphone, test it out, see what's going on with them, you can do that, and adjust some of your settings. There are notification settings where you can see, be alerted every time someone comes in the room or leaves the room or what have you. So just know that those options are available. And now let's talk about share content, because that's the biggie for this area. So this is where you're going to get to something other than just FaceTime viewing each other. And before I leave FaceTime viewing each other, I will quickly say, if you want students to turn their cameras on, students tend to be camera shy. Often a lot of faculty members are too. But I recommend, as a faculty member, you definitely turn your video on, especially if you're going to want students to share. You go first, right? Turn your camera on. If you want them to turn their cameras on, then you need to actually specifically ask them, hey guys, I want you to turn your cameras on so we can see each other and be a part of this class together. If you want, same thing with questions and comments, if you want them to audibly ask questions and comments, you'll need to say that, because students will naturally default to the chat, which is fine. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but that is where they will default, because it's a little safer psychologically than actually turning on your audio and being recorded and having that there out loud. Okay, so back to share content. That was a freebie. There are a few different things you can do in here, and we'll kind of quickly go through each one to interact with your students or to share things with students as you're going. So you can share a blank whiteboard. It's about what you would expect it to be, right? You can get a pencil and you can, draw whatever you have going on here. You could draw a little bear, right? And then you can use text and type out here whatever you need to say. Oops, I didn't take it. Okay, once you've got some text out here, you can go back to using your mouse and you can increase its size or what have you. You can use a pointer if you're wanting to specifically say, look at the way his eye, I didn't do a real good job on this artwork, and look at how his eye is winking here or whatever. So you can point to particular things on the screen. This is particularly helpful if you open the whiteboard up for students to be able to edit it, and they can all add their thoughts on a particular question you have at the top or something. They can all add their individual thoughts here, and then you can point to Johnny's quote over here and talk about it for a moment and bring it out. Additionally, you can use different shapes to say, hey, look at this particular piece over here, or this particular piece over here. You can change your color if you would choose. Clear will clear everything, but then you can also come back here. You can also clear things yourself individually by going back to the mouse, and you're like, oh, I didn't mean to draw that second circle. Just select it and hit the delete key on your keyboard. Okay, you'll always, when you're finished with anything on content items that you're sharing, you'll want to come up here and find the little stop button. That will stop sharing the screen. When it's gone, it's gone. So if you want to take a picture of the students' interactions on here or whatever you've got going, you'll want to use a screenshot tool of some sort to do that before you stop. Or just relax and know, hey, it's in the recording, because you hit start recording at the very beginning. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording. And now we're going to talk about the next thing you can share, application or screen. And so this is sharing something going on your computer. Okay, so that students can see you working live on something, just as if you were working live on the computer in front of them with a projector in the classroom. So I chose it, and it's sharing my screen here. So I'm going to move collaborate off to another, come on. Oh, hang on. There we go. I'm going to move collaborate off to another window so we don't have that window in window view. That's why it's doing that. And now I'm going to say, it defaulted to sharing my screen over here, so I'll just use that. I believe you have the option to choose, if you have multiple screens, which screen you share and all of that. So I'm going to just pull up a PDF just as an example of what you can do. You could bring up anything live and share it out here. So, go through it. You could show, whatever you're doing. You could bring up a browser if you wanted to, or Excel or some other tool that you're using, and you could talk through working through doing some process or talking through some project or what have you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll bring it back over here so you can see what I'm doing. So just like before, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, right? And we're back to collaborate alone again, okay? So that's sharing your screen. Sharing files is a little bit different, but kind of similar. So cool thing about files is you can go ahead and put your files in this room in advance of the session, as long as the room is open and available, which if you're using your course room, it's always open and available. So you actually drag and drop files over here to share. So I could drag over a picture, an image, a PDF, drag it up to this little dotted line area, right? It turns green and straight. So you can bring in images, you can bring in PowerPoints, PDFs. This is the PDF we had a while ago. I just happened to share it in here before, have it ready. So you can kind of load all the things you're going to go over with students in here in advance, so you're ready to go. Notice this has the little icon, that badge that says 23. That's because this is a PowerPoint slideshow that happens to have 23 slides, and so you can kind of see what you're getting into and see a little thumbnail of what's going on. So let's say, just for grins and giggles, I'll share a picture here. Click on it and say share now, and it will share it out to students. You can then write it up. You can use a pointer like before to say, hey, where is she looking? She's looking at something else, right? You could draw all over them and say, look at that big smile. Brother's very happy to have a sister, right? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and instead I'm going to share this PowerPoint presentation because I'm ready to swap over to it. And notice that all of your slides are here. Students aren't seeing anything yet, right? They're just seeing blank screen while you're talking through it. But you have the option of, and thank you, Dr. Barnes and Candace Barnes and Dear Littleton, for sharing your presentation with us the other day at a campus thing I went to, the training I went to. I just happened to have it on my computer, and I'm using it for this just to have something to go to. But you can come up and start at a particular slide. Once you click on a slide, it's going to share it with students, or you can start at the beginning. It doesn't matter. You start wherever you want to. So let's say you're halfway through the slide deck and you realize it's time to you're starting like the next day's session or whatever. You can start on slide 12 or what have you and begin from there. You don't have to start from the beginning. Okay, and then whenever you are ready to move to the next slide, you just click the next slide. So we're on slide 2. I'm ready. I moved to slide 3. Okay. So that is the presentation, kind of how it works. A PDF is very similar to the image. Images and PDFs are about the same as far as Blackboard is concerned. Then you can mark them up just like you would anything else. So let's say, okay, we're gonna have 20 credits for this. That's important. So let's make it big. Notice this is kind of hard to see right now. Let me go ahead and make my screen bigger again. That will make it a little bit bigger. Students can zoom in and out if they're on a mobile device where they can use pinch zoom. So if they're on a tablet or a phone of some sort, the whole Collaborate view looks very much the same, but they can pinch in and out to see things farther in. But if you're going to need it to be bigger than this for yourself or whatever, rather than sharing the PDF on here using share files, I would go back. I'm going to stop sharing this. I would go back and share it as a application or a screen, right? So share your screen, then you can zoom like you're used to, scroll through, do whatever you need to do. Okay. So that's kind of the 3 main areas. You can also do some basic polling, multiple choice. You can add a question here with up to 5 answer choices. There's also true, false, yes, no. You can add a question there and kind of get a gauge on the class of how they're doing on where you're at now. Something cool I didn't know about is the timer. I just recently learned about this. You can set a timer for yourself or for everyone. So if you're doing a guided activity, maybe you're having students pause, you're pausing from presenting and having them reflect on something and write down their thoughts on something, or write down everything they remember from the last 5 or 10 minutes. You could set a timer for everyone for 3 minutes to do that. Or you could set a timer for yourself to remind yourself to pause after 5-6 minutes and have students do something active. And so I thought that was kind of a neat option to be able to pause yourself. And then breakout groups. So this is a little bit more advanced, but I'll briefly show you real quick. The main room is where we're all at by default, right? And then you can have several groups down here that are breakout sessions where you take students and yourself out of the main room and into small groups of students to collaborate together on something. Okay, so you'll warn them in advance, hey, we're going to do a breakout session real quick. I want you in your group, you'll be in groups of 3 or 4. I want you in your group to think about this or talk about that, answer this prompt, whatever the case may be. And then you can simply drag people down in here. Or if you just want to move everybody automatically into a random group, when there's more than 2 people in here, then you can say, you can move it from custom assignment, click this down arrow here. You can choose random assignment and randomly move them into however many groups you choose. Okay, so I could manually move my phone person into this group. So let's talk about the benefits of this. So not only could you use it for, I'm going to move me back up. Not only could you use this for like a class setting where you're moving them into smaller groups to work together, maybe working groups, maybe they're working on a group project and you could put those groups individually into their own groups to work together. But you could also use this in office hours. So if you use Collaborate for virtual office hours, your main room could be almost like a waiting room, like the couch in front of your office or whatever. Everybody could land there, be chatting among themselves, or even chatting with you. You could, it could be a whole group talk, but then somebody asks a question about their grade per se, or something that you need to talk to them individually. You can say, Adam, that's a great question. Let's go to private virtual office and let's talk about that one-on-one, and then we can come back to the main group. And then you can take Adam and yourself, move y'all down to another group, and you guys can talk about whatever situation is going on with that student. Okay, so that is breakout groups, and that is the rest of the share content information. Notice when you want to move this, I zoomed. When you want to move this panel out of the way, say you're watching chat and it's, you don't want to look at it right now or whatever, you can always click the X and it just slides it out of your view, out of the way. Students have the same option. So some students will be totally involved with the chat the whole time and kind of watching it and watching you at the same time. Some students will find that overwhelming and they can just close it and open it when they're ready to engage in that area. One last thing I do want to talk about is where to find the recordings. So we're done with our session. We're finished sharing content, talking amongst the students. So let's go ahead and leave the session and stop the recording. So I'm going to stop recording first. Right, recording has stopped, and now I'm going to leave the session. Then, and you always get this little, they're trying to check on how good it was. I'm just going to skip it for now. Once you leave the session and everyone has left the session, then the recording will be uploaded to Blackboard for anybody in Blackboard, in that Blackboard course, to see and access. So I'm going to close out of this tab and take me back to Blackboard. Okay, and to find the recordings, you will just click on this little 3 arrow option over here, and it moves from sessions where you're currently at to recordings. And so there you can see whatever recordings are available. I was playing around in this course earlier, and so this is the first recording in that room. So if you're a student in this class, you could go back and watch this session. Note that it's date and time stamped, so you could tell students, go watch the recording from today's lecture on cell membranes. Then they can come back in here, go to the recordings, and find it in there. It does take it a little while to process, but it's not too terribly long. It wasn't that long ago that I did this one, and it's now available. It just won't start processing until you either say stop recording or everyone's out of that session. And then to get back to the main menu, you can go back to sessions and you're there. I think that is the quick overview of Collaborate. If you guys have any further questions, always feel free to reach out to us in CTE or reach out to IT, and any of us will be glad to help you with any specific questions you have or pedagogy related questions on using Collaborate.